So please, if there are any burning questions on the floor, identify yourself now. If not, I'd like a quick question. I absolutely understand, Clive, that you don't want to confuse it all by association devolution with Northern Powerhouse. But if it's all about investing in the economy or attracting investment to the economy, surely we will need to develop our skill base to take advantage or actually supply the labour to those new markets. And if, as Ivan pointed out, we can't control skill bases in apprenticeship or until you're 19, how will we take that child at 7 in that ITV programme way and find the man or the person who we can grow into an economic unit? I understand the point you're making, but I don't see how they can be disassociated. We will need the skills and the power to control the skills if we were to attract the economic investment with new industries.
Well, again, Sue, it's the two things are connected, but they are different. Why on earth do you stop laying down the hardware and the infrastructure that allows that connectivity to take place? Because you're not happy with the current state of the devolution deal on skills. No one knows more than me how poor that is. We're being told to reform FE in Greater Manchester when about 50 to 60% of what FE spends is putting right the literacy and numeracy problems that come out of our schools. It is a real problem. We have to address it. There are imperfections around the devolution agreement. But let me be absolutely clear on this. The naysayers on devolution, we spent 15 to 20 years running it. So what do we say now? It's not convenient at the moment. This is difficult. You haven't got fiscal devolution, but we have consistently said if the money is given to us and under our control, we can deliver it more efficiently. And we've got to set about doing that.
Thanks, Clive. Right, questions from the floor. Who's first? Lady in the green dress. Do you want to stand up and just...
Me?
Yep. And short and pithy, please, so we can get the debate underway.
Hi, I'm Jennifer from the Manchester Evening News. I thought I should probably ask a question since it was me that wrote that article you quoted.
Was it?
Yes, it
That
was. You talk about there being a distinction between the Northern Powerhouse being about economic development and collectivity, and devolution and other strategies being around public sector reform. Do you not think the reason that there's some doubt among the public about the Northern Powerhouse is the fact that it doesn't join those two things together, and that the government appears to be contradicting itself within two different strategies?
Do you want me to...
Anybody else would like to add to that question? Okay, gentleman on the very far right.
I heard an awful lot about what the Northern Powerhouse is, which is very useful for clarity. When it comes towards transport, which is a very important goal, ambitious. I'm not clear exactly what the spending infrastructure that Sean mentioned has taken place in the last 22 months. It's actually not. I had a brief look at the Transport for the North policy document in March. An awful lot of really impressive, ambitious goals, the vast majority of which don't have clear funding at the moment and are still looking for funding. So when Sean said that the last 22 months have been amongst the best in Manchester's history, as opposed to 100, 200 years ago central government, it's hard to understand.
Right, thanks, sir. And a question from the gentleman in the blue shirt with white cuffs.
Thank you. Tom Robinson, I work for the Labour Party. I first of all would like to pay tribute to the two sirs who are not here tonight, both Richard and Howard. I think their endeavours on this project should be noted here tonight. But my specific question is this. Do we feel that GMCA has got a handle of the Northern Powerhouse now that it's here, having their two leaders fought so long and hard to get it?
Right, so 3 questions, and I'll come back to the next set in a moment, and to the panel first. Sean, if we can hear from you. So we have a comment here saying, actually, there is a link between devolution and Northern Powerhouse, so I don't see that Jennifer is convinced that Clive with your answer.
Yeah.
And then we've been given a gift by the sirs, but are we actually exploiting it sufficiently? And what is that transport thing? Fast, what does it mean?
I'll do the first one because it was addressed to me. Yeah, then I'll pass over because quite rightly came back off what you saw as criticism of your article. But I think your observation is absolutely right. That's the problem. There's not clarity. You've heard 2 speeches tonight absolutely about devolution. I'm not saying they are completely integrally interconnected, but they are different things. And what you've got is a lot of people trying to take different takes on the problems of devolution and address that to something that is fundamentally different. We have to keep them separate. Why on earth do we think in this country that we don't deserve the sort of infrastructure that every other advanced economy in Europe and around the world has got? This has got to be put right.
Thank you. Ivan, to your point. So are we going to blow the one chance that Sir Richard...
Well, no, of course we're not. But it's a bit of a false distinction, this. Are you for devolution or you're against it? I'm for fairer, better devolution than the settlement that we have at the moment. And I'm for an honesty and an openness with the public at a very early stage and a far greater level of engagement with them. But let's just take some of the things. I agree with much of what was said by Clyde. But as a business organisation, brand matters. If your brand is contaminated at an early stage, how many of the audience remember the big society? Remember what happened to it? So if you start talking about northern powerhouses and then slash and burn the funding available to the north of England vis-a-vis the funding available to the rest of the country, if you make decisions which do redirect jobs from one part of the country to the other, inevitably you play into the hands of the cynics and the skeptics, and you contaminate and damage your brand. And when you shift resources from those with the greatest need to those in the shires for purely party political reasons, you create and fuel cynicism and skepticism. Now, Jen's point is really important. I believe in the inextricable link between sustainable economic growth and social justice. So the idea that you separate out an economic agenda from an infrastructure agenda, from a social renewal agenda, from a public sector agenda, is completely, in my opinion, a massive mistake. What we believe in, in terms of progressive values anyway, is that inextricable link between sustainable growth. So we have to ask some questions, by the way, about the model of growth, because we as a Labour Party don't believe in trickle-down economics, by the way. That we need to reflect on that a little bit in terms of where we ought to intervene more and have an active industrial strategy in our conurbation as well as in our country. Very, very important. But the reality is that I think the devolution settlement, in terms of the relationship between Greater Manchester and the Treasury, is pretty clear. I just think there are elements of it which are flawed. As for the Northern Powerhouse, it is completely unclear. It's a political slogan. It's designed to send a message about a political party being a one-nation party. I don't mind that. I don't mind it. But the idea that it has clarity of purpose and definition in the context of the Northern Powerhouse is simply not the case. However, this gives us an opportunity. So my challenge back would be, if there is a lack of clarity, if there is an ambiguity about what the Northern Powerhouse is, then we should be coming together with our colleagues in Yorkshire, in the North East and Merseyside, and actually ourselves developing and shaping our Northern Powerhouse, which we then are in a much stronger position to negotiate about with central government.
Thanks, Ivan. And to the question on transport, Sean, a quick response followed by Cara, and then more questions from the audience.
So very quickly, so Ivan will be aware that that is what the North of England is doing at the moment. All local authorities are working with LEPs and with businesses to define what the North of England's economy should be, what are those enabling capabilities that we need to have. So I can see it's going to be financial and professional services, logistics, education, all of the things that we're talking about. So we're already doing it to try and give the definition to what we need to do. And the big society failed because people ridiculed it immediately as a brand, and we should not repeat that mistake with the Northern Powerhouse again, because we will just see something come and go and miss that opportunity to do something about it. And trickle-down economics, both the sirs appear to be very happy to see it happen in the city and out trickle down across Greater Manchester. So there's clearly a difference there. But to transport, very quickly, some of the things I think are different. Well, we know we've seen Transport for the North established with statutory underpinning and responsibilities to coordinate transport across the north of England. And the Northern Transport franchise arrangement that was agreed towards the end of last year is significantly better because it has been managed in collaboration with DfT with local authorities in the north. We would not have got that deal around removing those pace of change, around the electrification, around the enhancements to the service, if it wasn't for the north of England working together. So it can do it. And we've seen across Greater Manchester huge Metrolink expansion And the November 2014 agreement gave us £900 million of earmark fiscal devolution. So it's incorrect to say that there isn't fiscal devolution in these agreements to date. That's going to fund the Metrolink extension to Trafford Park.
I'm going to take some more questions on the floor, and in order to Carol have his say. So, gentleman in the check shirt, gentleman in the small check shirt, and then the lady with the glasses. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. I asked this question of Richard Leese a few months ago, and I asked him, why didn't we get a referendum on the mayor? Because I feel that the deal was done behind closed doors, and that's why there wasn't a great deal of either public understanding or public buy-in until now. And it's great to see everyone here tonight. His answer was that people aren't really that bothered about governance. And I look around tonight and I think they are. So that is my question. Was the deal that Osborne wanted that we get a mayor, or we don't get the money?
Thank you very much. And the gentleman in the short sleeve shirt, please.
Jim Hancock, a question to Sean and to Clive. Sean, are you comfortable with Clive's sort of Berlin Wall between economic development and connectivity and all the social priorities that Ivan has outlined? Or do you think the Northern Powerhouse has to be more than that? And to Clive, do you see the need for any democratic input? Because there's a feeling in this room, there certainly has been a feeling all the way along the line, that the intra-elites have so far negotiated all these issues.
Great, thank you. And hand at the back. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Elijah and I work on behalf of Reclaim, and my question goes to Clive. The question is that you prioritise economic values in development prior to the devolution. However, should you not direct your best interest towards nourishing the working class, the very foundation of economic growth, and the workers that are the very backbone of our society, and essentially the young people who are due to inherit that very future that we are building here today? Thank you.
Thank you. Bit of a theme going on, I think, there. So let's first of all pick up the gentleman's question. Ivan, did we have to say there was going to be a mayor, or we didn't get money?
No, of course we didn't have a say. I mean, the deal was you either have an elected mayor or you don't get these powers. Very simple. And that was the deal that the leaders did. This is why I, in many ways, defend the leaders. They were put in a situation where they could have turned away and walked away from these new powers, from this opportunity, from this fresh start, and they were put in a very difficult position. So no, there was no flexibility. But what, of course, did happen, and we should be honest about this, is the leaders negotiated with George Osborne the weakest conceivable elected mayor model. And you may ask some questions about why that was done. You might say it's because they wanted more democracy. You might say it's because they wanted more control. You can say you can ascribe all sorts of motivations, but they did negotiate a particular model in terms of how that new mayor and how that new cabinet will operate. And my concern is it's not just about how the mayor and the cabinet will operate. It's how they then connect with communities, with civil society, with all parts of Greater Manchester, with public participation, not just public consultation. There is a massive difference between those two concepts. Now, in the end, of course, I believe in effective leadership. You do not deliver economic and social progress without effective leadership. But if you look at the history of radical change around the world, it's usually two things. One is its public pressure, its public desire and insistence on change. And alongside that, it's strong and effective political leadership, using your political power to achieve change. In my view, this needs to be, in the context of our project, about reducing inequality. So if people are honest, there would have been no devolution deal without the elected mayor. I think many people in the Labour Party do not support an elected mayor, and in other political parties too. Some people do. But there would have been no devolution deal without Greater Manchester agreeing to the position of an elected mayor.
Thanks, Ivan. Let's speak to a political economist now. Can you divorce the need for upskilling the region from its economic fortunes? Or are they inextricably linked? The audience seem to have an opinion that differs from the panel.
Well, the skills thing is really quite difficult, because education is very important, but we have a kind of double problem, which is we're over-educating the mass of the population. 1/4 of airline cabin crew have degrees, and we've attached to that a huge system of debt for young people, which is a completely dysfunctional system of big education.
But in the context of the Powerhouse and the
We've
revolution.
had technical education in a complete and absolute mess in this country for the last X years, with various half-hearted attempts to regenerate it, which have to face the fact that this is not, as Sean is putting in front of you, a technology-based economy, that the largest provider of apprentices is Morrison's stores. I think with education, we need to bring together the actual requirement for skills in the economy and how we are educating young people, instead of thinking of it as some kind of magic ingredient which will produce economic growth, like agglomeration.
Okay, but more questions please from the floor.
Sue, I was specifically asked there 3 questions. Can I very
Sorry,
briefly
Clive, yeah,
answer them? Just
absolutely.
our audience deserves that. Do we need more democratic input? Look, again, you can have a big debate about the democratic input to the whole devolution argument. And you can have a debate about should there have been a referendum. And there are good arguments on either side. So, I mean, yes, I agree with you, but I'm not saying what we've got now is imperfect, and it can always be more democratically accountable. Some will say that having an elected mayor immediately brings in a level of accountability that wasn't there before. The second question was the Powerhouse brand, was it hijacked and am I constraining it? Yes, it was hijacked. What I'm trying to do is crystallise a definition of how it was used in this context. And the context it's being used in here when it was launched was get more key and critical investment into the key northern cities around this area, and that will drive improved levels of economic growth. The last question, am I ignoring the working class? God, no. Why on earth would I be doing that? But the biggest thing I can do is do everything in my power to ensure that this economy takes the measures it needs to take to grow more efficiently, and that trickles down to more people. You might not buy trickle-down economics or not, but the more successful our economy is, it will benefit more people. That surely has to be good.
Well, I'm very glad to say that Jim McMahon has now arrived in the building.
Okay, well, I've maybe got an advantage because I'm kind of towards the end, or a disadvantage because I might completely kind of rile against the argument. I should say, I feel quite well placed now after being in Parliament since December. You'll notice I very quickly settled into being a Labour MP, not least of all I'm very late coming to the devolution table tonight. And I think that's the kind of the crux of the issue for the Labour Party, and I'll maybe give it a slightly different interpretation of the debate that you've already had, which is, listen, most national politicians like talking about reform and change. They'll talk about reforming the European Union, they'll talk about reforming local government and education, they'll talk about reforming the House of Lords. They're less keen on talking about reforming the House of Commons. And it does strike me therein lies part of the problem with devolution, in that we've more or less bottomed out now what Scottish devolution is. We more or less understand now what Welsh devolution is, and Northern Ireland is governing to a large extent its own affairs. England is an afterthought, and it does feel to me as though we are just repeating and repeating some of the fundamental problems with devolution as we go through this. Because what I want to see is a constitutional settlement for the whole of England. I want to see power shifted from Whitehall and Westminster and given it to our towns and cities and the counties, of course, across this country. That isn't the devolution that we've got. The devolution we've got is the Chancellor picking and choosing who he wants to talk to and when, on what terms, in closed rooms where the public are not part of that debate. But actually, MPs aren't even part of that debate. When I speak to MPs in Westminster, they have no idea what devolution conversations are taking place. And let's be honest, most people in this room don't have any idea up until Jen Williams tries to debunk it and make some sense of it all in the Manchester Evening News. But you probably didn't know before that. And to me, that's the missing element to this. So we say as politicians that we speak for the people that we represent, but they are absent from that conversation. And I'm not sure how we can say with any confidence that we're acting on their behalf Now, I give full credit to Greater Manchester, in particular to Howard Bernstein and to Richard Leese for the work that they've done to drive devolution forward, because in some ways this is about incremental gains. It's about pushing the argument further and further along to prove that we can do it. But there is a contradiction, and the contradiction is this. There are too many MPs, and maybe I'm one of them now, who have fought like hell for selection and then for election, and they've climbed the greasy pole to be a minister, and to hell if they're going to give power away once they've got it. And unless we reform what Parliament is there to do and what the role of a Member of Parliament is in this new settlement, we're always going to have that tension. The tension where Greater Manchester can have control of its skills, but we can't have control of our own schools. It's crazy to
Jim,
be in
just
that
on that
situation.
point, the gentleman in the check shirt there raised the point saying, are we actually in the danger of being taken over by a brigade of technocrats who actually, don't consult, don't act in a democratic manner, and actually will be done to us rather than done with us? Do you agree with that? Even though you were actually part of that gang of men in suits who were signatory to George's plan.
I can say in my defence as being one of the blokes on the photograph, I've done my bit by standing down, and there's now a woman in charge of Oldham. So I've done my bit. I'm just waiting for Sean to move on now, and we'll all be happy. No, indeed. It's all right, mate, don't worry. But no, because actually, I think you could easily argue that, but I think the opposite is true. I think if you look at the way the Greater Manchester politicians have worked with the Chancellor to get a deal on the table, that's not happened by accident. It's happened because people have worked beyond party political loyalty and found a deal that works for everybody. My criticism isn't of Greater Manchester. I think full credit to them for taking what's on offer and even pushing it maybe a bit further than the Chancellor wanted. But when you peel the lid on some of this, we're meant to be grateful that we're getting £300 million of housing investment to Greater Manchester. But that's over 10 years. It's £30 million a year. We raise £76 million a year in stamp duty income that the Chancellor takes away from us. So if we want to talk about proper autonomy and proper independence, there's got to be far more of where we can be the master of our own destiny and not have the Chancellor determine very tight, restricted terms of that negotiation. And at the moment, as far as I can see, and maybe health is a slight exception to this, where I think we have made significant progress, but on skills, on the work programme, we're effectively becoming delivery arms of central government. And this isn't about giving power to us, this is about the Chancellor of the Exchequer, in a very systematic way, taking the power from other government ministries like health and education and other places and bringing it into the Treasury and then offering it out as sweets as if we should be grateful. And what I'm saying is, that's not devolution, that's not independence, it's not autonomy, because we're not ourselves determining our own priorities, marshalling the funding and the resources around to deliver on that, and actually having that democratic conversation with the public to secure a mandate. And I think without that, as much as we love it, and I do love devolution, and I'm going to continue to fight for it in Westminster, you can't take a Bentley badge and put it on a Mondeo and pretend that the Mondeo is now a Bentley. It's still a Mondeo, it's just got a Bentley badge. So let's be grateful for what we've got, but let's not fool ourselves into believing that this is a powerhouse.
Well, good evening, everybody. And once again, I want to declare that the winner tonight, once again, has been all of you for your participation in this debate. Your contributions from the floor. Your contributions from the floor. And if I may, before I do perform my duties as Chief Returning Officer, if I could also ask you to show your appreciation for the sterling job tonight that all our panellists did, and Susan Woodward, our chair tonight. Amazing job. Thank you, thank you. So before you, ladies and gentlemen, tonight the motion was the North more Poorhouse than Powerhouse. When we asked you what you thought of that motion when you came in, the numbers were as follows. For the motion, 38% of you, against 20% of you, with 42% undecided, and of course those latecomers as well, including you, of course, Jim, with very good reasons. The result, I have to say, is for the motion, 76% of you, against 23%. So, therefore, Ivan and Carol win the day. Well done.